Hey guys, it's Dr. May. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Just want to share another sensory motor psychotherapy video with you today. So this one is about understanding our body responses and habits by understanding a concept called procedural memory. Okay, so we're gonna dive into that today and get this up for us. Here we go. My computer's been a little slow today, so just got to be, there we go. All right. So this one's called The Language of the Body, Procedural Learning. Okay, so believe it or not, there's actually different types of memory. We're going to start out with memory because there's procedural memory, and that's related to procedural learning. Okay, so usually when we think about memory, we think about what they call declarative memory. Okay, so that's kind of when we can remember facts. Okay, so when you say, well, what's 4 times 1 or what's 5 times 3? It's a fact that you remembered. Or if you learned something in a history class, such as in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? It's a fact that we were taught and that we remember. Okay, and that's most commonly thought of as what we remember, right? It is kind of objective, and we could just pull it out and get to those facts when we want to. Okay, the other commonly thought of memory is called episodic or autobiographical memory. So when you think of an autobiography, it's a book that someone wrote about themselves, right? So when we tell the story about ourselves or remember parts of our life, that's an autobiographical memory. So that's often commonly what we think of as memory as well, right? When we think back to different times of our life and we kind of recall this happened and that happened, right? These narratives that we create are often feeling based too, because we tend to remember the things that seem more emotionally significant, right? So if there's a time when you felt really good, or a time when you felt really anxious, or something that stood out to you, you tend to remember those things more strongly. Okay. Sometimes, we could deliberately recall a memory from our life, such as when asked a question about it, or other times, memories just emerge spontaneously. Like something might remind you of something that you went through in your life. And you think, oh yeah, that reminds me of the time when and you tell a story about it, okay? So a lot of times when you're in therapy, trying to work through stuff that happened in your life, we think about it's all about autobiographical memory, right? My therapist is asking me questions. I'm trying to sort out stuff in my life that I verbally remember, that I could verbally tell the story about, okay? But sensory motor psychotherapy goes deeper than that, okay? Because into other kinds of memory. So let's check this out. There's another type of memory called emotional memory, okay? So this, again, like I was starting to say before, is when something is flagged in your mind because it seemed emotionally significant, right? So let's say on the left, we're looking at the happy face with the love eyes, with the heart eyes. You might remember a time strongly when you felt a lot of love from somebody, when somebody really cared about you and treated you kindly. That might be flagged as something important, or maybe something that showed you about like a significant part of your relationship with somebody, right? Other times you might remember something that is flagged as something dangerous or something threatening. So maybe certain people or certain situations are flagged in your mind and stand out in an emotional way because, it was really upsetting, right? So these memories kind of are designed to help us survive in a bigger sense. Because if I know what made me feel good, or I know what made me feel bad, or I know what was dangerous, or I know what was safe, it helps me to navigate through my life because I don't have to start from scratch each time. Things remind me of those things from the past, and then I react accordingly, okay? So emotional memories are also often experienced physically because emotions always have a physical component, right? So if I recall something that made me feel scared, I might feel a little bit of fear and anxiety right now because it's stirring that up in me. And so physically, I might feel it as well as emotionally, and as well as with some kind of a narrative about what happened, okay? Another little fun fact about this is that we tend to be better at remembering things that are connected to the current emotion that we're feeling right now. So if I'm having a good day now, it's going to be easier for me to recall things in my life that were pretty positive. But if I'm, let's say, really depressed today, it's going to be easier for me to recall things from my past that are also associated with feeling depressed. So all those memories kind of emotionally get linked with my current emotional feeling. So sometimes we like have a distorted sense of our past because it's through the filter of our current emotion, right? So if I feel depressed right now, I might have a feeling like I was depressed more of my life than maybe I actually was, just because I'm feeling depressed right now. Okay, so there is some distortion there at times. Okay. All right, so now the deepest, most unconscious one, procedural memory. Think of like a procedure, right? It's more of an action related memory. Okay, one of the common ones that we think of is learning to ride a bike, right? We always say you'll never forget how to ride a bike, right? Maybe I haven't ridden a bike since I was a kid, but if I got on a bike now, my body would know what to do still, because it kind of just unconsciously learned those movements, and it still could get back into those movements if given the opportunity. Okay, so the bike riding is kind of a neutral example. However, we have deeply ingrained survival responses that are also part of our procedural memory, right? So our body learns how to get into a mode of fight, flight, like running away, or freezing, or folding and collapsing and reaching for help and some other things. And it remembers those responses instinctively, okay, because they're designed to help us survive. So if earlier on in your life, you use those responses to help you, you might automatically continue to use the same ones now, whether or not they fit the situation. Sometimes they do, and they still will help our survival. And other times it might be excessive because maybe you're triggered by something and your body just responds as if you're in that situation from the past, okay? Relatedly, we also have approach and avoidance behaviors that are kind of automatic. So if we instinctively sense some danger, we might automatically pull away or run away and avoid it. Or if we feel that something's safe, we might automatically feel the urge to move closer to it. Okay, and now those are also tied into our survival, right? Avoiding the dangerous, going toward the helpful. Okay, so these aren't things that we think deliberately through. Like, gee, I think I'm going to put up my fists and rev up my heart rate today so I can fight back when this person insults me. Like, we might have a little bit of a conscious sense of it, but there's certain aspects of it that just come about unconsciously. Okay, so procedural memory is not the same as like declarative memory or autobiographical memory where I'm just telling a story. It's something that my body's kind of memorized and just kind of comes back to me when it feels like it needs it, okay? And because it's related to survival, they're very deeply ingrained and hard to change. So it takes a lot of mindfulness and deliberate working on this to change it. But in sensory motor psychotherapy, that's one of the things that we could start to work on, okay? It's designed to help us change the after effects of old traumas and attachment problems that are ingrained in our procedural memory by working through them using movement and other techniques. Also, third bullet point here. So the procedural memory is based on the unconscious assumption that the present might be the same as the past, right? So it's drawing upon our past experiences and reacting with survival responses to help us now. But sometimes the past doesn't match the present. Our brain reacts very quickly as if it is, but sometimes we have to reason it through and say, okay, it's different now. Maybe I don't need this survival response. I could do a different response, okay? But it's automatic at first until we intervene. All right, hope that makes sense to you guys. All right, so here's a little more information about how we develop procedural memory. Let me just move this box here. Okay, so step by step. All right, so our bodies continually respond to what happens to us and how others treat us and how we feel inside, right? Because there's this mind-body connection. So let's say we're looking at this picture on the top left. So it looks like a picture of maybe about 4 kids bullying another kid. And the kid who's being bullied reacts by slumping his posture, crying, avoiding eye contact, putting his head down, maybe walking in kind of a slow, labored way, Okay, maybe there's a shame feeling that goes along with it. Perhaps we're just guessing, right? So if this kid is repeatedly in this situation where he feels, made fun of or threatened or teased by people, and repeatedly has these physical procedural memory type responses, he's going to learn that very deeply. Okay, so the second box says when we repeat a movement, a sequence of movements, a posture, tension, or gesture over and over, it becomes habitual, right? So anytime that kid might feel threatened by something or somebody, even if it's not those original kids, he might automatically get into that posture. And all the feelings associated with that posture and that time might come back to him, okay? But unfortunately, like in the last box says, sometimes our old physical habits don't fit well in our current situation. And it would be better if we change them. Okay, so that's where the sensory motor psychotherapy will come in. So let's say now this girl's at a party. Let's say, the kid's now the girl. Okay, we're changing genders. That's okay. And she feels a little left out because she doesn't know people. But her body's responding in that same way as if she's being threatened again. But now having that slumped posture, the avoidance of eye contact, and the shame feelings are getting in the way of her meeting people, when there might be no reason at all to suspect that they would be mean to her, right? So it would be important in that situation, for example, for her to perhaps lengthen her spine, try to make eye contact, smile, sit up a little bit more, have more open gestures, okay? Because the old way of physically responding through her procedural memory is now preventing her from connecting to people, okay? So that's just an example. So here, changing procedural memory. So it's hard, but it's possible. Okay, so one of the main ingredients we need is mindfulness, right? So what's mindfulness? It's about being aware, tuning in the present moment, okay? And deliberately putting our attention where we want to put our attention. So when we engage in these habitual movements, fueled by our procedural memory, we could tune into that mindfully and be aware of the fact that we're doing it. So let's say I'm that kid from the other slide, and I notice, gee, you know what? I'm slumping over. I feel like I'm curling up. I'm not making eye contact. I feel like a heaviness in my chest. That must be an old response I'm going through. That's related to that time when I was bullied when I was in 5th grade. You know what? That was adaptive back then, but it's getting in the way for me now, right? It's a mindful, something I can be aware of now. And another interesting thing is that if we purposely embody that old posture now, the old feelings can come back with it, right? So if you start making that slumped over shame posture, you're going to start to feel the shame again, right? So that's that mind-body connection, the body-emotion connection. Another thing we can do that would start to change it is to start to put words to what we're observing and what we're experiencing. So instead of it just be a nonverbal body memory, we're now starting to describe, right? So in DBT, we talk about observe and describe as part of mindfulness, and this is exactly what we're talking about, right? So putting the nonverbal language of the body into words makes the implicit or unconscious explicit or more conscious, okay? And through many repetitions of being mindful, maybe deciding to change, it changes the procedural memory and creates a new one. Okay, so kind of like, let's say all those up arrows in that bottom left picture are all the times when we had that old thing. And now I just one time do something different, it starts to change it. But if I keep having more of those yellow down arrows over and over and over again, the whole pattern will start to shift. So I have to repeatedly be mindful, put words to it, and then do something different. Okay, and that starts to change the way I feel and the way I relate to myself and other people. All right. Okay, so we're going to get to some exercises we can try, okay, to kind of ingrain this concept a little bit more and learn about, some of the meanings of the postures we might have, okay? So sometimes it's a little safer and easier to observe other people first before we observe ourselves. So the first exercises are about reading the body language of others, okay? And you can do this by people watching or watching TV and looking at the body language of people on TV, or on even YouTube videos or Netflix videos, okay? But first, let's look at these pictures. Okay, so each of these pictures has a person in a certain kind of a posture, okay? So I want you to look at these carefully, right? Be a detective. And so for each person, what do you notice about their body, right? What kind of posture do they have? What kind of body language? What kind of facial expression, right? So just kind of go over that slowly and just look from person to person and try to describe it to yourself. Then ask yourself, what might each person's body convey to other people? All right, in radically open DBT, we would call this a social signal, right? So if you're making a body posture or a facial expression in the presence of somebody else, it's a communication, okay? So what are all these postures communicating to others, okay? Then we can take a guess. We may not be right, but we can take a guess. What might each person here be feeling? So what are the emotions that might be behind the physical presence that they have? Okay, and use emotion words, okay, if you can. And then we could also take a guess, and of course we don't know, what kind of childhood experiences might have led to this pattern, right? So let's just form a few theories, right? What was it like in their family growing up? What might it have been like in their social environment that may have led them to have these kinds of postures? You know, we're assuming that maybe these people tend to have these postures a lot, right? It wasn't just a pose for a picture. Let's say they typically stood in this way. So what kind of early experiences might have led to that? Okay, so some food for thought here, right? Okay, next one. Okay, so this exercise is called getting to know the body's language. All right, so let's say we're walking through the park and there's plenty of people around because the weather's getting nice, and we could just sit on a bench and observe other people. Or, you know, you go to some other location, the mall, or, you know, just walking down the street or wherever you happen to be. And just, you know, subtly, without staring, you know, observe the body language of people that kind of walk by. And again, if you don't have access to this because of where you live, let's say you're out in the country, you don't see a whole lot of people, or, you know, you're locked down for COVID, you don't see a lot of people, you can just do it on TV. Okay, very simple. All right, so then when you observe, okay, you can ask yourself a few questions. So one is, what do you notice about the people's bodies, such as the way they walk, facial expression, body language, eye contact, movements, posture, things like that. All right, so just describe what you're observing mindfully without judging it, just to, you know, just describe like you're an investigator, okay? And what do the bodies of the people you notice seem to convey about them, right? What might you guess about their feelings, about their history, about their personality based on their body language, okay? And of course, you know, we're being open to the fact that we may not know, but we're just practicing trying to understand, okay? All right, so now we're gonna reflect on ourselves. We're gonna turn it back if we are ready for it, okay? If you're up for this, you can give this a try. So I want you to reflect on, this one's called good times in your body. All right, so when you think about a good memory, okay, so you're using your autobiographical memory skills here. So you're deliberately calling up a good memory you might have had in your life. And, you know, stay with that memory for a little bit. You know, really try to feel it, try to put yourself there. So as you're recalling that memory, notice, tune into yourself mindfully, how your body responds. Okay, so physically, what does it feel like to think about that good time? Okay, and do you notice anything different about the way you're sitting up, about the way you're moving, about what's going on in your face, about any sensations you're having? Okay, so just notice it without judging it. So next, we're going to flip it around. Okay, this one's called bad times in your body. Okay, so think about a memory of a bad times, you know, something that didn't go so well, you know, maybe with a relationship, with work, with school, with some other stressor, okay? And stay with that memory for a little while. Now, you don't have to pick something overly triggering, okay? That's not the idea here. Maybe just something medium, okay? Stay with it for a little bit, and then go back and tune into yourself and your body, okay? So how is your body responding just to thinking about that memory? Okay, what's going on with your posture, with sensations, with your gaze, with your facial expression? All right, so just notice it without judging it. All right, so that's pretty much, oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was the last one. We had one more. Okay, so it's like a bonus, right? Okay, so here's an interesting phenomenon you may have noticed in yourself. Okay, I definitely have noticed it in myself. Where, see that picture where there's like the brain and the heart, right? And they're kind of touching fingers, like they're kind of connected. And, you know, there is a mind-body connection. But sometimes we try to change it by thinking our way out of it, okay? Or sometimes there's some things that we kind of know intellectually, but we don't feel it emotionally yet. Or our body still feels like it's not matching what we know, okay? So, you know, we could be very frustrated because we know something doesn't make sense. We know we shouldn't worry about this. We know this isn't a problem, but we feel like it is. You know what I'm saying? So I want you to think of some examples of things that your mind knows, but your body doesn't know yet. So your body's procedural learning hasn't caught up with yet. Okay, so I'm going to give you a few examples just so you know what I'm talking about. So let's look at the chart at the bottom. So let's say your mind knows that you're competent. Let's say, you know, you're good at your job, you know what you're doing, you know, you could have some evidence to show that you know what you're doing. Okay. However, when you talk to your boss, you feel shaky as if you don't know what you're doing. So your body's responding as if you're incompetent. And then you're feeling stupid and insecure, right? But your mind knows you're not. When your mind knows everything's good, you're competent, there's no problem, but your body and your feeling are somewhere else. Okay? Know what I'm talking about? What about this? So my mind knows I could be a fun person, right? I have friends that think I'm fun. I have other people that think I have a sense of humor. I could enjoy myself, you know, look like I'm enjoying myself. However, my body still feels stiff. I feel like, you know, I'm a little awkward at social gatherings. Maybe I avoid eye contact when I don't know the people, or I'll have trouble smiling and I'll kind of freeze up, you know, as if I'm in some kind of threatening situation. But I know when I'm comfortable, I can have fun, but my body is still like not letting me have fun. And when I physically react that way, my emotions react more to my body and I start feeling shy, lonely, and disconnected, right? So what I know in my head, like I could be a fun person, is now being contradicted by what my body and my emotions are doing. All right. So these discrepancies are things that we could address with sensory motor psychotherapy by working with our body first and moving it up to our intellect, rather than trying to change it with our intellect and everything else isn't cooperating. Okay. All right. I think this is the last one. Yes. Okay. I was right this time. All right. Stop share. Okay. All right. So got some more to think about. Okay, so I hope this made sense to you. If you have any questions, just put it in the comments, and I'll see you soon in the next video. All right, have a good day, everybody. Take care.